Alright, so let's continue. So now we need to fix a few things on the definition screen that we have over here. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to show a loader till we get something in return to the GET request that we make to the API endpoint. Just like what we have in the final version, if I refresh, as you can see, we have a loader in the center of the screen and we are showing it till we get something in return, whether the definition of the word, if it exists. Otherwise, like if it's an invalid word, we need to show the message. But even for that, we have to show the loader. So for this, within the definition component, let's create a state and we can name it as loading and the function to be set loading. Now, as we want the loader to be visible right away, like as soon as the user lands on this page, this screen, we want to show the loader. So for that, we can set the default value of it, the default state value to be of true, as we are going to use it in order to show the loader conditionally. So now that we have this state, let's actually show the loader. And for that, we can import this circular loader, this thing that you see over here, this thing, we can import it from the material UI library. So it goes by the name of circular progress, and right over here, before we return anything, the current content of this screen, we can add in a if statement and we can check that if the loading state is true, we can do it in such a way. In that case, we just need to show the circular progress component that we just imported from the MUI library. So now if we take a look and if I refresh, we will see that the loader will be visible and it's going to keep on going because we need to set the state to be false as soon as we get something back from the request. So for that, right after we update the state, we can set the set loading to be of false as such. And if we do that, we will see that we are going to see the loader for a split second, and after that we see the content. So that's perfect. So now in order to align the progress component, the loader in the center, we can wrap it up inside of a box component and we can pass in the SX prop right over here. And to this thing, we can actually do the same thing that we did in the home page. So right over here to the main box component, which is wrapping the entire screen of the home page, this entire thing, in order to align it in the center of the screen, both vertically and horizontally. So for this thing, we are using these stylings. So let's actually copy the same thing, but instead of copying it, I think it makes more sense to have it at a common place so that we can reuse it multiple times. And for that, instead of copying the same thing, let's actually get to the theme. And within the theme, there is actually another theme configuration variable, which is the Mixins one. So Mixins, again, if you have used any CSS preprocessor, you should be familiar with this thing. It's just your reusable blocks of code for styling. So over here, let's actually give it a name, and I think we can name it as align in the center, something like this. You can name it whatever you want, doesn't matter. And let's shift the entire thing, the entire styling that we have right over here to this Mixin. So now let's head back to the home page, and in order to refer to that that Mixin, which is within the theme, let's actually import another hook from the same MUI library package, the core one. So this time we are going to import a hook, which is the use theme hook. So this thing, when invoked, returns back the theme that we are currently working with. So over here, if we invoke the use theme, we actually have the theme right over here. And within this theme, we have the Mixin that we just added right over here. So on the same box component, instead of manually passing in all the different properties, what instead we can do is right over here we can spread out the mixin as we have the theme. So over here to this object, let's spread the theme.mixins and the name of it, which is this one right over here. So if we do that, we are going to have the same styling as you can see, but the benefit is that the next time we need to use the same thing, we just need to get the theme reference using the use theme hook, and we just need to apply it as such. So let's get to the definition right over here, the definition component, and we actually need to do the same thing. So let's actually get the theme right over here, and we also need to import the use theme hook. Is it imported? Nope. I think okay. Anyway, let's import the use theme, and let's actually do the same thing. Let's copy the same box component that we have in the home, and we can use the same thing right over here. Let's replace the entire thing. So if we do that, let's actually get to the definition screen by searching for something, and there we have the loader in the center of the screen. So that is beautiful, exactly what we searched for. Perfect. So that's one thing off the list. Now the other thing that we need to do is we need to handle the case where nothing is returned from the API endpoint, or to say in better words, when the user is searching for a word for which the meaning doesn't exist. So for that, if we do the same thing, if we actually manually visit, or to say we make the request a get request, there we have the definition, and if I just open the console and if we search for a word which doesn't exist, it's actually going to throw an error, although it returns back this message. But as you can see, it's actually throwing a network error, an error from the server. Let me actually show it over here. If I refresh, 1 second, there we have the request, and as you can see that even though it returns back an object, which is actually a good thing with the actual message, but this thing, it's actually a network error. It's more of like an error from the server. So the good thing is that we can actually catch this error by using the try catch block. And by the way, this is something which needs to be appreciated, because normally while working with public APIs, if you search for something which is practically an error, it just returns that thing, like it returns the message, but the status of it is not an error. And in cases like this, it's like we have to do a bit of extra work, like we have to actually check the thing, the return value. But in this case, we don't have to do that, because it returns back the server error, the error from the server, so we can actually catch it by using the try catch. So let's do that over here. We can wrap the entire thing inside of try, and we can catch it up over here. So now in order to handle this case, we actually need to have another state. Let's do that for the exist one, exist, and we can name it as exist, and the function to be set exist. So by default, we are going to set the value to be of true, because we are going to assume that the word that the user is searching for, that it does exist. However, if that's not the case, in that, then we need to show the message which says that the meaning doesn't exist, or whatever we are returning in the final version. Let's actually see that. Oops, add actually exist, word not found. Okay, so that's what we need to do. So we will be checking this thing, the if one, even before the loading state. So right over here, we can check that if the exist, if this thing, like if the word doesn't exist, and we are going to set the value of it, we're going to set the set exist. Sorry, we're going to use the set exist in the catch block, and we're going to set it as false. So when this thing happens, which means that this thing will be true. Then we want to return back. Well, actually we can copy the same thing. Instead of circular progress, we can show a typography message which says that word not found, and next to it we can show a button which says that, what does it say? Go back. Okay, so let's use the go back, and we can actually use the same go back function, which is this thing that we added to the the back icon. So let's actually do that over here. When the user clicks on this thing, let's add in the on click, and let's call this function. So if we do that, and if we take a look, let me actually refresh and let me actually open the console. Okay, the button doesn't exist because we have to import it. Let's do that. And what is this? Border. Okay, I think I made a typo. It is bookmark. Yeah, just bookmark. Anyway, so now if we save it, and if we take a look, let's refresh. It isn't working. Okay, so we are setting this thing to be like this. Should work. Actually open the console over here. Okay, seems like the try catch block isn't working. 1 second. Definitions. Well, obviously I need to check my own application. That's I was actually checking this thing and I was confused. Why isn't it working? Anyway, so now if I take a look for something, like let's search for a word which doesn't exist, and well, that's perfect. We have the message and we have the button. Let's actually style this thing over here. So for the button, let's set the variant to be of contained. It just has some background color, that's it. And let's actually pass in the SX prop. Let's set the text transform to be of capitalize. And if we take a look, let's actually set some margin to the top as well, empty of about 2. That is beautiful. If I click on this thing, we should be pushed back, and actually I manually changed the URL, so it just pushed me back to the previous one. However, the user is going to use the home page in order to search for a word. So if we type something like this, word not found, click on this thing, get back. So that's perfect. And let's actually search for a word which does exist. So that is amazing. Now while we are at it, let's also change the icon color for these two icons. And for that, over here, for both of these icons, the back icon and the bookmark icon, we can pass in the SX prop. We can set the color to be of black. If we do that, well, that's perfect. So I think that's it for the loader and handling the case where things may not work, or you do get the point, like the meaning doesn't exist. So now we need to work on the bookmark, and we also need to work on playing the audio, the pronunciation of the word, if it exists. Again, it's not always going to be the case, and we're going to handle that. So let's do that in the next video.